All right, so this is for the week of May 10th through the 16th, and the numbers here are there were 48 items that were sold for an average price of $38.36, bringing our grand total to $1,841.62. So to start things off, the first thing that sold way back on May 10th. And the reason I'm so far behind is because my computer had to get fixed and they didn't have the whole screen. Like there's a strip of black that went through the right side of the screen. And they needed to replace the whole screen. And apparently because of COVID, they didn't have any screens available, so they needed to wait on the part. And it took 2 weeks for them to fix the new MacBook. So first up, way back on May 10th, first thing that sold was a vintage Benris wristwatch. It was a man's mechanical wristwatch. I have a true affinity for, I love wristwatches, especially old ones, you know, some like World War II ones. This one is working, and you know, it's not being the best name out there, but it still sold for $50. But the thing is that it sold overseas, so the guy ended up paying an extra $50 to have it shipped. Next up, we have an antique 10 karat gold amethyst little accent hat pin or stick pin. These aren't, you don't sell all that many stick pins nowadays. They were a lot more popular way before my time. You know, when people wore fedoras or whatever those wool caps were. But this one, being 10 karat gold, thus the top part, it sold for $38.83. So a good sale price. Next up, we have two international sterling silver courtship pattern forks. Forks? Yeah, salad forks. And this sold for $60. Next, we have a cuff bracelet, sterling silver cuff bracelet. This is, I got this in a bunch of these sterling silver cuff bracelets. They were all signed, a lot of them were signed to different Native Americans, but you could figure out who it was. This one, I have no idea who was signed by. It's signed IC, but this one sold for $26, which is sweet. Next, we have a vintage brass flower cuff bracelet. This one, there's not really all that much special about it. It is rather cute, very hippie-esque, and this one sold for $7. Next, we have Brighton. Brighton, I do a lot of their jewelry. Actually, just yesterday, I sold a Brighton bracelet, and this morning, I sold a Brighton bracelet. But these are sunglasses. Again, I sell tons of sunglasses, whether they're scratched, you know, people just, there's different companies that will replace the lenses for you. I don't have them replaced myself, but some, you know, people will buy the frames and put their own lenses in there, or they'll just use them for parts. But these sold for $17.49. Next up, we have another pair of sunglasses. These are prescription lenses, and this is just to accentuate the point. So these are sunglasses, but the lenses in them are prescription lenses. You can't just throw these on your face. You're not going to walk around and wear these sunglasses as they are. You have to have the lens replaced. These frames, they are Chanel, and they sold for $105. And I don't think I had them up very long. I'm not too sure. Let me see what I had them up. Yeah, I mean, I put them up on April 15th, so I literally had them about a month before they sold for $105. So that's a sweet sale because I buy my sunglass frames for $1.99. Generally they're $1.99. Sometimes you'll go in there and there'll be a $2.99 price tag, but I never go and buy them out of the case because a lot of them they'll sit forever. So they're one of those long tail items where you just have to buy them, you hold on to them, and the right person will come along, and eventually you get the money back. So, but $1.99 to $105 all day long. I'll take that all day long. Next up, we have a vintage pair of 14 karat gold filigree opal earrings. These sold for $45, which is really sweet because I generally pay somewhere around between 75 and 80% of the gold value for my gold, and this was definitely way over that. I think the probably gold value in here is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $15. So $15 to $45. Sweet. Another whiskey jar or a glass. This is like a little mason jar, but it has a little handle on it from some place called Starvin' Marvin. It sold for $8. Plus there was, looks like there was 13 something in shipping, or almost $14 in shipping, which is crazy. I don't know where that went. Next up, we have a vintage black and clear rhinestone brooch. This one sold for $9.70. Next, we have this is a decent sale, but I've had these for a long time. I'm really bad at pronouncing some of these names, but this is like Wachterbach, Germany. They're known for their red mugs, but they have a lot of different other ones, which can sell for pretty good money, like the skull ones. They're pretty good. I've had those before. But these ones are the red. I had a whole set of these where I had the plates, the platters, and then the coffee mugs. All that stuff sold. All that was left was this one. And the set of 8 sold for $71, which is pretty good because a lot of the mugs now, if you got, at least in my Goodwill, are 50 cents a piece now. So if they're not marked, you know, if they're not a Starbucks mug, which they put like $4.99 on, which I just completely stay away from nowadays. But in any event, these sold for 71 bucks. So, you know, turning $4 into 71. That's awesome. Next up, we have a Seiko watch, and this sold for 30 bucks. Problem is that I just got a message this week because it was sent to some foreign country, and they're saying that the watch battery wasn't correctly installed. I don't know how that could possibly be. But in any event, that will be coming back. But this one did sell for 30 bucks. It sold for 30 bucks, which in like, I think it was only up for maybe like a day and a half before it sold. Next up, we have a Wild Goose Studio Celtic Cross. So I buy tons of religious stuff. Religious stuff, especially Christianity stuff, sells really well. Stuff that you hang on your walls. If you're lucky enough, you'll find like an altar cross, like a big giant altar cross. Those will sell. I have never sold one for less than 100 bucks. This one though is not that. This is a small, I think it's maybe, what's it say on there? It's 6.25 inches, so somewhere around that big. This sold for 20 bucks. It's not made out of wood. It's somewhere in Ireland they make these. It's called the Wild Goose Studio. I've had quite a few of these guys, but they always sell. Next up, these sold really quickly. It's a sterling silver set of earrings, and it's got coral, turquoise, and the cool part is it's got a coyote claw in each one. The only problem was, I would have sold it for much more, but someone had lost the little hoop part, and I didn't want to get it replaced, and they just they put like a really cheap looking thing in there, and you're not going to sell for big bucks unless you know it's completely matching. But in any event, this pair sold for 50 bucks, which is super awesome. Next up, we have a vintage sterling silver mother of pearl choker bracelet. This is like just an unbelievably cool bracelet, but for some reason, I don't know if it was the keywords or if it just got lost somewhere in the shuffle of eBay's algorithm. I don't know. But you know, you have something for 3 years, I'll take 25 bucks. I didn't pay very much for it. I'm sure it came in a lot of jewelry that I used to buy. So 25 bucks, sweet. Next up, we have action figures. I don't tend to do action figures that much unless I buy them in lumps, or if I get if I get a really good deal, or if I know, if it's like a vintage Star Wars guy that, like Blue Snaggletooth or somebody like that. If you don't know who Blue Snaggletooth is and you live in the Chicagoland area, you should look him up, because this is like the only area it's really actually kind of common to find them. But in any event, Lex Luthor action figure, 1996. This one sold for $5, and glad to see it going. Next up, we have another religious piece. This is a black rosary. There's nothing really special about this guy. It is vintage, and it looks the part of being vintage, but it's not sterling silver. It's not capped, but it sold for $15.40, so that's a good sale. Up, we have a original. Now, I'm gonna say right now that I think that I probably undersold this one because it sold really quickly. But again, sometimes you have this like where as soon as you put something up, someone will offer you something. Like they almost have like a lookout for that. They have a notification symbol when something comes up. But this is an original World War One. It's a American Expeditionary Force pin, and I sold this so quickly. But again, I sold it for what I was asking, so 24 bucks. You know, you can't. There's nothing I can do about it. If I underprice it, that is what it is. Next up, we have a Dragon Ball Z character. These are some that I picked up quite a few years ago as a lot. I've been selling them off every so often. This one sold for $7.98, which, you know, I'll take it. When you buy a bag of toys for $2.99 and you got a whole bag full of them, you know, $8 is cool for one figure. Next, I have a vintage race car hat. This is funny because this sold to somebody in the town right next door to me, which usually when they do that, they ask to pick it up, but this person did not. No mention at all. Yeah, I mean, this was literally, my brother lives in that town. It's literally one town next door, and yeah, sold for 18 bucks, which is awesome. Next up is Goldette, which I have quite a few larger statement pieces, like really big necklaces. You know, they'll come down, just huge necklaces by Goldette. One of them's, actually I have two, Egyptian one is gold and one is silver. I think I sold one of them, but I don't remember actually. But this one was just a bracelet, a Goldette bracelet, 7.25 inches, and this sold for 12 bucks. You know, a lot of people think that you're gonna make a lot of money in gold and silver, when in actuality, that's the furthest thing from the truth. The vast majority of the time that I'm selling things, it's going to be antique jewelry or vintage jewelry, and that's where you're going to have your greatest markup, especially brooches. Brooches. You want to do brooches because there's not a huge market for brooches, but it is such one of those weird things that if you know, you're going to buy them for very cheap. I mean, 99 cents is going to be probably the highest you're going to pay for a brooch. Especially if you guys are, I don't do thrift, or I don't do garage sales, but if you're going to a garage sale, no one is pricing that. You know, chances are you might even have to ask people, like, if they have the pins and stuff. But in any event, yeah, keep an eye out for vintage jewelry. It doesn't always have to be silver. It doesn't always have to be gold. It just, you know, vintage is the way to go. Next up, we have an antique Royal Winton scalloped soap dish. So I'm not too sure what these actually were for, but I do a lot of these little dishes and bowls that are like antique porcelain. I call them soap dishes or wedding ring holders. And they sell like that. You know, I don't know if that's just a pro tip or if everyone does that. I have no idea. But this one sold for 11 bucks, and again, just buy cheap. Whatever you're doing, you're trying to, you're like a monkey almost. Like, I know it seems like a lot of people know what they're talking about, but a lot of things you don't know who is going to buy them. A lot of these things you're buying them and you're going to hold on to them for a while. I'm not buying them and displaying them in my house. I'm buying them, they go into these, I don't know if you can see this behind me, but they go into these 27-gallon bins, and then they're put away, and I don't ever think about them, and the right person comes along and, you know, and they find what they're looking for. Next up, imagine that we're getting into some higher things here. Okay, next up we have a pair of Oakley oil drum polarized sunglasses. These are brown, which is kind of an odd one to find, but these, you know, the lenses, I think, might have had a few minor scratches on them. I don't think they were too horrible. But again, if you're buying frames, I'm expecting that the person is replacing them. These sold for 45 bucks, which is pretty darn good. Next, this one also sold in only a day or so of being up. This is a commemorative Norwegian Constitution coin. This is a large coin. It might have been somewhere around that big. And this one sold for 10 bucks. Next up, we have brooch. This is a cameo brooch, a cherub brooch. This is I think this was the large one that I had found, 5.2 centimeters. And I don't believe that this was an actual shell, otherwise I would put that probably in the title. But this is a cameo cherub brooch, sold for 21 bucks. Couldn't be happier. Next up, the next two actually, this whole thing kind of sucks. The whole situation kind of sucks, but I'll explain it. So, the other day I found two of these pins, They're by this woman from, it's 1988, Liz Tech, and like these mirror style brooches, like handmade. There's one woman that does a lot of this now. Oh my God. House Pins by Lucinda is one that does that now, but these were from 1988. Liz Tech. It was a mirror brooch, and the problem is I flip flopped it, and I don't know how I do this. This is the first time I've ever done this, but I sent that woman a Trifari brooch, and the Trifari brooch, who was supposed to get the Trifari brooch, I sent this one to, and this mirror brooch by Liz Tech sold for $50. The other Trifari one sold for $9.45. So you could imagine my disappointment. But in any event, I refunded the $50 one. The other woman was having it sent from, I asked her to return it. She said that she couldn't because it was being sent to an USA address, but she was having it secondly shipped over to Italy. So what can you do? Next up is a cool sale, because this was mine, and this is part of when we cleaned out our closet. So I think so far the running tally is about 120 that I made from cleaning out our closet this past month. And this was a Coogi style sweater. It's like a 3D sweater. If you don't know Coogi, that was really popular a few years ago, and you could find them all the time. At least up by me you could. There's one time I walked in and I bought 25 of these sweaters, and each one was like $4 a piece. I went and got them dry cleaned, brought them home, and it was unbelievable. If you know Coogi, you know what I'm talking about. But in any event, this is not Coogi. This is just a knockoff. This is made by Roundtree in York, but this sold within a week, and it sold for $56. This is a vintage Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi. This one sold for $8.40. I don't want to tell my kids because they'd probably be pissed. Next up, vintage 1936 community flatware set. The pattern is called Coronation. This one sold for $50, and anytime, so when I buy, I don't know if where you guys go, but a lot of times when I buy flatware sets, I'm buying them in bins, not like when you go and shuffle through the bins. That's my fucking nightmare. But when you go to Goodwill, there'll be like little bins of silverware, and they're each 10 cents a piece. So what I go for is, if I have a full set, then I try to get somewhere around, $75, maybe $100, depending on the pattern. Even, it could be higher. But for a random set that's kind of popular, if I can get $1 a piece, then that's good money. This one, there's only 38 pieces, and it sold for $50. That's good stuff. This next up was a good high dollar item. I've had this for about a year now. It's an antique Masonic necklace, but it's not for the Masons. It's for like the daughters of the Masons, and it was made out of 14 karat gold. And I originally had it up for $1,000. It was up there for over 6 months. I started lowering the price, and eventually just took an offer for $300. Next up, we have a sterling silver Native American turquoise ring. This was signed. I bought this along with that other cuff I mentioned earlier that had IC on it. This one sold for $19. Next up, we got some Oakley square wire 2.0s. These ones sold within a few days for $55. Next up, I had this money clip forever. I basically do not buy money clips anymore, and I don't think I bought this one either. I think this is probably in a vase, and it sold for $14. Next up is another whiskey glass. You see a pattern here. We got jewelry, and we got whiskey glasses and soap dishes. All right, so this one is a lot. So I'm sure that you guys, depending on where you're at, you guys know things about certain schools there. People will find things that are collector's items from that area that if you're not from that area, you would never know. So the U of I, the University of Illinois, used to have their mascot as this Chief Illini-Whack, but because it was offending Native Americans, they ended up taking him off. So if you find anything with Chief Illini-Whack on it, it sells very well. This one I've had numerous offers on, but I kind of stuck to my guns, waited out a little bit higher dollars, and I ended up getting $28 for a single whiskey glass that says Illini Dad. I don't deal in shirts anymore, but I used to, and I used to find a lot of them, and you could easily turn a $1 shirt into $30 very quickly, very, very quickly. Next one is a vintage sterling silver turquoise necklace pendant. This one sold for $12. $5. Next, we have an antique pair of Yankee Clipper bookends. I generally like to get a high dollar price for bookends, but I do buy them almost whenever I see them. This one I was not so lucky, but I did get $32.05. Next up, we have Waterford. Waterford is a name to know. You should know how to look for Waterford, even though if it has a sticker on it, doesn't mean it's Waterford. Always look for the little etching. Somewhere on the piece, there'll be a little etching. This one is Waterford, and then you can look up what the pattern is. This was Murano pattern. You look up the pattern on replacements.com. This one sold for 40 bucks. This is a almost like a 6-inch vase, 40 bucks. I'll take it. Next up is a 10 karat two-tone, so white and yellow gold bracelet. This was 4.81 grams and sold for $135. This one was pretty cool because this is just a brass ring, and generally brass, sometimes you won't even get 15 bucks on a silver ring, but this was a brass ring with little enamel dots all over it, and this one sold for 15 bucks. Next up is a sterling silver buffalo charm. This is a tiny little charm, goes on a bracelet, little buffalo. This sold for 11 bucks. Next up is a single, not two, but a single stud diamond earring, 14 karat gold. This one sold for $11.42. Next up is a 14 karat gold diamond heart pendant. This one sold for $35. Next up, this one is the other one. I bought these at the same time with the other Seiko watch. This is actually my favorite. I would have wore it if the band was a little bit bigger, which was this guy's problem. He ended up buying it for $80. He got it. He said that it didn't fit him, so he sent it back. I ended up relisting it, so it'll be on next week's video, and I believe it sold for $96. So awesome. Turn that around. One more thing about the Seiko watch. This is a Datejust homage, and there's a few different models of these, but if you see the fluted bezel, which it's called a fluted bezel, so it's got these little lines all that encircle the crystal of the watch, and it looks just like a Rolex Datejust. So they're very popular. If you find there's a white on white, it's not gold, but it's like a silver or chrome. It's the same style. It's the same style. You'll know what I'm talking about if you do just a tad bit of research. But it's a Seiko watch, and maybe I'll even try to put it up there. Those, if you find one, are really decent money. But because people don't wear as much gold anymore, although I personally like it, although I do like silver as well, but if I was to buy a Rolex, it would probably be a gold one, very similar to this. The gold and black face is just, it's primo. Next up, we got a vintage mid-century modern cactus paperweight. This was pretty darn cool. I was pretty stoked about this one, but I only got 19 bucks, so it is what it is. Next is we have a 14 karat gold yellow rope chain earrings. These ones were on the heavier side at 1.52 grams, and they sold for 75 bucks. Next up, we have another rosary, but this one was old, and it had some little medals. They're called medals. They look like little charms, and this one sold for 40 bucks. This is the last one now, is a vintage hot air balloon. Now I have two of these. There's still one available if you're looking. This one sold for $6.30, but the reason I'm so stoked about this one is because I've had it since 2016, March of 2016. So over 5 years ago I put this up, and just recently I got paid for it. So anyway, keep it up, guys. If you like the video and you want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. If you like the video and you made it this far, dude, thumbs up, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm gonna try to do another video tomorrow so I can get back on track, so we'll be more up to date. So we're not, this almost was half, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago that all this stuff ended. But thanks for watching.